Next, we have a fascinating case study on the hospitality industry by Mr. Hishan Singhawansa, Deputy CEO and Chief Operating Officer at Cinnamon Hotels and Resorts. We'll explore how lean management principles are being adopted in the hospitality industry to improve both efficiency and guest satisfaction. Let's offer a round of applause for Mr. Hishan Singhawansa as he comes onto the stage.
Shall I start? Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. I'm Hishan Singhawansa. I'm part of Cinnamon Hotels, which is part of John Keel's group. And I here represent the tourism and hospitality industry of Sri Lanka. And I think over the last few months, there have been a lot of talk about tourism and hospitality playing a big role in the kind of growth story of Sri Lanka from rising out of crisis. Everyone talks about the low-hanging fruit. So I'm here to kind of represent that industry and talk about it a little bit from a productivity point of view. So, I mean, to give a little context, tourist arrivals to the country has been very encouraging over the last year. 2024 had close to 2 million tourists coming in. This year is projected to grow even further, another 25 points on that. One of our best years, hopefully. And it contributes to about $3 billion on estimates. So it employs about 2.5% of the workforce of Sri Lanka directly, and another altogether about 5% of the workforce indirectly in Sri Lanka, generating about 5% of the GDP. So it's an important industry, and I feel, and we feel, tourism is in the cusp of big growth. 2 million arrivals into a country is very small compared to regional destinations. If you look at Bali as a destination, small island gets about 6 million to 8 million tourists. We are at the right place. India, doorstep of India. Indian outbound tourists is poised to grow twofold, threefold over the next 5-10 years. And we are right here trying to take advantage of it. So I believe, and I think we, as well as the government had said, they have a target of 4 million tourists over the next 3 years to achieve about 8 billion GDP contribution, which I believe is a very realistic number. So in that context, I'll dive into the productivity element of hospitality. So my presentation is around these topics. First, I'll talk about the global perspective of hospitality and how does it compare with Sri Lanka, and especially around the employee angle, and then give a view on the workforce before I dive into the Cinnamon Red case study. Cinnamon Red has been here for a long time, so but I'll go back and explain what our thinking process was, and also look ahead in terms of what do we need as a country to enable this growth. So global hospitality, if you look at hospitality as an industry globally, it's a low productive industry if you compare across industries. And how can you compare across industries? It's measured on revenue per employee. And hospitality in general, hospitality, agriculture, hospitality includes restaurants, in general is a low productivity industry from a revenue point of view for obvious reasons, because it requires a lot of, it's a service industry, it requires a lot of manpower to deliver the service. And hence, as an industry, it attracts a lot of entry-level, low-skill, transient workforce, low-paid. So that's the general sense across the globe. And if you look at regionally, these numbers vary. These are kind of estimatory data, but regionally the numbers vary, where Asia-Pacific is a little bit of a laggard, but Asia-Pacific is also a big region. But if you look at North America, Middle East, you've seen those revenue per employee numbers move up. This revenue per employee number is a factor of two things. One is the revenue ARR, we call it the room rate, that demand generation, plus the productivity or the efficiency of the employee, which is measured, roughly measured staff to room ratio, or we call it the employee to room ratio, or man hours per occupied room. So those are the kind of comparable measures we can have to measure productivity. So if you look at the region, employee to staff ratios also, or employee to room ratios also vary from luxury to upscale to mid-scale. And Asia and Middle East hotels are kind of laggards around employee to staff ratio. Because labor is cheap in these regions, there tend to be more labor to employee to room. If you look at diving into a little bit more to the region of Asia, better employee to kind of room ratios, if you look at it, better employee to room ratios is a predictor of RPE, or revenue per employee. You can see Singapore, Japan, South Korea are at the high end, and where you can see India, Indonesia, where the labor cost is low, the labor employee to room ratios are lower, and related revenue per employee number is also lower. And in general, you can see how higher you go in the category, the revenue per employee number goes up as well. This is just to kind of paint a picture of the region and the global scenario of productivity in hospitality. This is a study done by Asia Productivity Organization, APO, in January 2023, commissioned by the Singaporean government. So this is a detailed report, but in general, it also looks at cities and how those numbers kind of come out. So Singapore leads in the annual value add per employee measured, driven by not only ARR, but also higher employee output. And they also found out through this study that technology adoption alone is not a predictor of higher productivity. There is an element of process efficiency and training also impacting this higher productivity. In general, productivity improves with the hotel category when the hotel category goes down from luxury to budget. So these are the numbers. If you can see, employee hours per occupied rooms varies from about 3 hours to about 9 hours in the region. This is just to set the stage around region. Now I will dive into Sri Lanka. Looking at Sri Lankan comparators, we don't have a lot of data readily available around it, but looking at Cinnamon data and other listed company data across 2023, these are the, you can see the numbers on the screen. Sri Lanka, in general, is behind the region in terms of revenue generated per employee. That has a factor of Sri Lanka is also in the recovery stage from a revenue point of view. We are still on the verge of getting into our baseline of 2018. But the key factor here to kind of focus on is the payroll cost as a percentage of revenue is also pretty low in Sri Lanka as against the regional peers. So that tells you one thing. We are also the lowest paying country in terms of labor in hospitality in the region. And even with those lower numbers, our GOP number per employee is also lower than the regional peers. So that's a concern from a country point of view in terms of our labor productivity and our hospitality industry in general. Then if you look at the employee perspective, now this is looking at since 2018 to 2024, we have had a big adjustment in the country from an inflation point of view. Most of the employees in hospitality industry, other than their basic pay, they rely a lot more on the service charge component. So service charge component plays a big role in their monthly earnings. And if you can see, the blue and the orange explains that. And compared against the living wage recorded in different numbers, it hasn't kept up. Even before 2018, this was barely enough for a living wage in terms of the basic pay plus the service charge. So for an individual breadwinner, also this becomes a very challenging situation for them to survive in the industry. This has in, like for years and years, because this has been the case, most of the industry workforce has a secondary or a secondary income source to survive. That has been the case. So I'll show you the workforce dynamics. This is Cinnamon data. As expected, you can see high attrition levels at lower years of service. We have two charts. The top chart explains the attrition versus the years of service, and the right-hand column and the line chart explains how much of the workforce is in those segments. The bottom chart explains attrition versus age. So these two graphs show you a good picture where you can see where you have low years of service, obviously you have high attrition, but 2 to 5 years of service, attrition is also pretty high. 40% is a concern for the industry because you get trained staff leaving the industry. Beyond 5 years of service and about 35, 45 years age, the attrition drops, indicating that most of the employees at team level, earning about 80 to 100,000, they definitely need a secondary job, secondary source of income to survive. Because otherwise you won't last 10 years in the same job earning 100,000 rupees in the job. And 30% of the workforce, as you can see, is above 45 years, which is also unusual for a hospitality industry. Like I mentioned earlier, the global workforce is very young in hospitality because it's entry level, very transient. You have a lot of part-time workers, you have a lot of seasonal workers. Sri Lanka doesn't have that. So that's a clear difference between our industry and the global industry. So if you decipher this information, we can come to a conclusion that the hospitality workforce has two distinct cohorts or personas. You have the below 25 to 30 years age, eager to work and learn, no family encumbrances. Main ambition is to gain the experience and before moving into a lucrative destination. So their main ambition is to come into the industry, get the experience, get the certification, and to try to look outside. Look outside for the Middle East, Maldives, and more lucrative destination. And you can see high attrition in that cohort, but willing to work for low pay. They are willing to put in that energy and effort to get that experience before they go out. Some trickle through and we absorb them at a higher level, but most leave. Or most leave the industry itself. Then there's another cohort, which is 40 years and above, with family, having secondary incomes because they can't survive with 100,000 rupees. No ambition to progress. Their primary job, hence there's no real incentive to perform because the labor laws are in this country are such that if you're a permanent employee, it's very difficult to drive performance through, and you can, it's a safety net. And low attrition, because the job is a safety net. The primary job becomes a safety net for their livelihood. So we see at different degrees, I wouldn't say that this is the cycle, or I call it the vicious cycle of low productivity is not homogeneous across the board, but there are parts of it in each segment, each area of the industry. So because of the low earning per employee, like I explained, 80, 100,000 rupees, it drives need for secondary income, or they move out. That means you are not putting in your full effort in the primary job because you want to safeguard your energy for your secondary job. That drives need for more employees because you have low productivity on the primary job, need for more employees, driving the overall margin down, drives that makes a low pay per employee and reduce service charge. Higher the employees you have in the hotel, lesser the service charge you get because the overall revenue gets divided by the number of employees. And that drives low earnings per employee. So this is the vicious cycle around low productivity to different degrees, I agree, but this is a kind of sense of that. That's why we end up with 30 to 35% of the workforce at 45 years and above, comfortable at 100,000 rupees a month pay doing this job. And the kind of underlying factor to kind of establish this, there are unions established over decades. The main incentive of the union is to protect the status quo and protected by the labor laws and the safety net. And new entrants who come into the industry also gets kept in line because the majority of the workforce work in that way of low productivity. So this is because there's no incentive to perform more than the other employee. So when we looked at this 10 years ago, we understood there are two kind of underlying reasons. You can't drive employee earnings. Higher employee earnings is the root cause. To drive the higher employee earnings, you need to drive productivity up. For new hotels, when you set it up, you come with a blank sheet, so you have the opportunity to do it. So in the case of Cinnamon Red, I'll dive into Cinnamon Red case study. So concept of Cinnamon Red was done in 2014. It was new at the time in Sri Lanka. We focused on very fit-for-purpose offering with luxury amenities to deliver. We call it lean luxury, which is best value for money in Colombo. So we want to be the best value for money hotel in Colombo and to reduce frills. And if you look at, I'll dive into the numbers first and then go into what we did. So if you look at Cinnamon Red productivity metrics compared to others, we have other Colombo hotels and resort hotels. Employee to room ratio at Cinnamon Red operates at 0.75 compared to other hotels at 1.6 to 2.2. I know there's a factor of the positioning, but this is also beyond the regional operators at 0.8. We achieve 0.75. And employee hours per occupied room, if you measure it, Cinnamon Red delivers at 5 hours, which is 2 times productive than the other hotels. And if you look at the regional budget hotels, they add from 3 to 7 hours. So we are in the ballpark around that. So this helped Cinnamon Red revenue per employee to be almost 2 times. This is indexed to the resort hotels, almost 2 times as the resort hotels. And earnings per employee also 1.6 times more than the other hotels. And that helped drive our EBITDA margins to more than 40% of that hotel. So Cinnamon Red, as you know, as you would have heard, the investment was paid back in 2.5 years. It was a big success story, driven by other factors as well, but productivity and positioning and the ways of working was a key success driver of that. And you can see the numbers. These numbers are financial year 19 because it's comparable before the crisis. So there was we tried to solve the problem of employee earnings through high productivity, which generated high revenue plus better margins. So how did we do that? So keys to our success, I simplified it in 4 big areas. All these 4 areas need to work in tandem. You can't work one without the other. So number 1 is positioning clarity. Obviously, the lean operating model and technology played a big role in doing this. And the organization culture and leadership also was a kind of foundation behind it. So if I dive into positioning, so like I mentioned earlier, we wanted to kind of create a positioning. If you look at that graph on the screen, you had the value versus engagement level of how you measure brands. And we saw an opportunity to give a highly engaged, fit for purpose, less frills, offering at good value from a positioning point of view. So example, we focused on a good sleep experience. If you're coming to Colombo and you don't want to spend a lot of time in the hotel, so we focus on the time you spend in the hotel is when you sleep. So we focus very much on the sleep experience and the room experience, but reduce the frills. We reduce the baggage. We don't have bell desk. We don't have room service. We had temptations to kind of go into that, but we said, no, we want to be focused on our offering. And with that offering, we could deliver good value. And we really focused on that customer requirement and delivered it very well. And also we communicate. Communication is also a big part of the success here. to clarify that we are not cinnamon grand versus cinnamon red. There's a difference, and in terms of what you can expect and how you market it. So that number one, it was positioned as this young, contemporary, energetic place which attracts a young contemporary traveler and to deliver the requirement of a good sleep experience with convenience rather than frills. Second big factor in our success was lean operation. From day one, it was important that we set up the operation in a way that we drive efficiency at 0.75. Multi-skilling was a key concept. We have no cashiers at Cinnamon Red, dedicated cashiers, so the waiters, the front office desks are empowered to do own cashiering. We didn't have any, like I said, no luggage handling. Then you had another key factor is non-traditional functions. We wanted gym operators to help with the rooms. We wanted them to help with the front office. Front office staff sometimes help with the F&B. So to deliver this, the key factor was also training. So training is a big key to success for us to make sure that everyone is skilled up to deliver this. And we had a focus on rotation of duty so that they don't get bogged down into one role. And we also wanted to simplify processes. That I'll come to a little later on the presentation as well, in terms of using technology to drive simplification so that people can take decisions faster rather than going through the ranks to take a decision. So this was a big key to our success. Third element is technology. We have a self-check-in kiosk. We have IPTVs introduced. This was 10 years ago. Where anyone can order things through the IPTV, e-concierge, interactive table for orders, tab check-ins, self-use vending machines. We don't have room service, but we have vending machines. We have a vending machine for ice. So everything was built around convenience and self-service so that we can improve on our productivity. And the fourth element, like I said, like kind of foundation around this is the culture and leadership. Because we kind of attracted a young cohort of people into the brand or into Cinnamon Red, so it was important that when they worked hard, they could also enjoy themselves in the business. So it was very important that we have a lot of engagement activities, give them opportunities to do sports, do other engagement activities, keep that balance going. Because when they do a lot of work, they need to have a culture and a place where they feel comfortable and energetic. And a good indicator of this success is that for these 10, 11 years, there was no need for a union at Cinnamon Red. So that's a kind of good indicator of that this culture is still strong over the last 10 years. So that's a quick summary. If I summarize Cinnamon Red success story, we were very focused on making sure that we focus on the positioning, then get the operational systems helped by technology to deliver the 0.75 employee to room ratio and create that culture to make sure that it sustains. And it has been a great success. We see a lot of other hotels also after 2014 coming up with the same concept, trying to emulate it. So now I go into what does it mean? How, in terms of how do you look at that operation? And it's a select service, we call it, select service operation. We don't have a full service like a luxury 5-star operation. How can that, what we learn from Cinnamon Red can be, extrapolated or used in the other full service? So the key enablers, I feel like, to deliver high revenue per employee and employee earnings, like I mentioned, is the two things. Average room rate must increase, and so that we can, the current workforce level, which is driven by market forces, but reduce the employee to room ratio is where we can kind of work on. Any new hotel, we have the opportunity to do it. Now, when we open Cinnamon Life, or now we're opening another hotel in Kandy, Missed by Cinnamon, we will have the same kind of concepts implemented. But the challenge as an industry we have is we have a lot of old hotels with the old workforce and the problems that I spoke about earlier. So how do you kind of drive this change? So number one, we feel, or I feel, is technology will play a big role in simplifying and helping this employee-to-room ratio to improve. So to establish a multi-skilled, empowered workforce, we need to use technology. Number one use of technology is to simplify things. I think as an industry, as a country, I speak for my behalf also, we have a lot of accountants running business, which means there are a lot of controls over controls over controls. And we feel technology can kind of untangle it and improve the productivity of people. So if you use technology to give decision making to the front, we can unlock a lot of productivity around that. So that's definitely use of technology in terms of performance management and measurement controls, and even in guest insights. We feel technology is an enabler to improve our guest delivery in terms of driving better insights to improve the service delivery. So technology will play a big, big role in terms of driving this productivity up. And there are enough and more examples that this can be implemented. Second thing is, important is to accommodate a bit higher employee-to-room ratio in full-service hotels. You cannot work with 0.75 employee-to-room ratio. You need a little bit more. So to enable higher employee-to-room ratio and to deliver higher earnings per employee, you need a transient workforce. When I mean by transient workforce is you need a lot of part-time work coming into the industry, you need a lot of seasonal work coming into the industry, and to make sure that the level of quality is good, training and development capability has to be world-class to make sure that all these transient workforce that come into the industry are equipped with the right technology and the training to deliver from day one. So this is key. When you bring in a lot of transient workforce, the overall permanent workforce goes down, and their earnings per employee improves naturally because of that, because the service charge impacts that, plus the margins are also better for the company to give more return to the employee. So this is a big factor of how you can drive this productivity upwards. Third element is labor laws versus status quo. I think in terms of how do you change the old hotels that we have, which are over 20 years old. We have employees who are 15, 20 years in the industry. How do you change that? Even if you want to right-size it with the right technology, right transient workforce, there is a problem with right-sizing the current workforce. So in that sense, we need market dynamics to help to kind of enable right-sizing, because you need to kind of give enough compensation for us to right-size the workforce. Otherwise, with the current labor laws available. But the big opportunity we see, or I see, is the female participation. The female participation numbers were shared on the screen as well as a country, but in hospitality, it is even worse. Our female participation number across hotels is 12%. Average 12 to 13%. Cinnamon is about 17 to 18%, which is a woeful number if I admit it. And there are a few factors around it, cultural, historical factors. But beyond that, there are few things like labor laws. Labor laws don't allow females to work after 10 p.m. in this country, except for few segmented like IT industry and few industries. So that puts a big restriction in us recruiting women to operate our restaurants, our banquet operations in the night. So I feel there's an opportunity to really drive the supply of people, like I said, the pipeline and the transient workforce in. There is a big cohort of people, half the population available for us to bring into this industry to really drive this growth. And that's an opportunity we feel that the authorities also can help to drive forward. And I know it was in the news, there was a first hotel opened, full all-female hotel opened in Kandalam a few weeks ago, which is a good indication of things to come. But labor laws also need to kind of help us in this journey and to drive this. So So these are the kind of key factors we feel will be the enablers to drive productivity in hospitality. I finished 1 minute early, so thank you very much. I'm happy to answer any questions. I should go there.
Thank you, Mr. Singhawansa, for your interesting presentation. We'll now move on to the Q&A segment with my colleague Anushka.
Thank you, Mr. Hishan, on that valuable insight about hospitality, lean luxury, which is something very important in the coming years, focusing on sustainability, productivity, but also ensuring the hospitality in Sri Lanka has standards, and just focusing on reducing costs is not enough, because we have to focus on maintaining quality as well. So with that, maybe let's move into the questions. Yes, Mr. Murtaza. A mic here, please. Okay, could we have a mic in the front? Yep, thank you.
Hishan, one of the comments you said was Cinnamon Red made its money back in 2.5 years. Now, a lot of your focus was on labor output per employee, and you said EBITDA margin of 40%. Can you talk a little bit about the capital productivity issue? Because the design of the hotel, the layout, the cost, you see, the whole challenge in this industry is what do you get customers to pay for? Like some people put like marble floors or granite floors, some people put cemented floors, but can you get the premium for some of these fittings? I mean, that's a huge challenge in this industry. Can you talk a little bit about that capital productivity problem? And we also know that cost of construction here is far in excess because of the protectionist policies. So that whole gamut, can you shed some more light on what you all did in the new hotel in Kandy?
Yes. So if you look at Cinnamon Red example, one thing I forgot to talk about was the design of the hotel also helped us in terms of making sure that we deliver ergonomic workspaces to deliver the value. But overall, from a capital productivity point of view, the numbers are not very rosy for hotels in Sri Lanka. And like you mentioned, the construction cost is very prohibitive. And when we look at, even if you get BOI approval, the taxes, the para taxes that you have, from cess to PAL to elements like that, add easily about 50% taxes, even though you have BOI. And there are construction material. So all those things, if you compare construction cost per square foot versus regional peers, our numbers are very high. So we are reliant on, if the rate, like I mentioned, compensate for it, then it's okay. But rate is a factor of demand and supply rather than the quality of the product. So quality of the product alone doesn't drive the value up. The value of what you can get out of the rooms is driven by the overall destination and the market, the destination positioning. And if you look at Sri Lanka compared to peers, at a 4-star, 5-star and luxury level, our rates are, I would say, comparable to like Thailand and Kuala Lumpur compared to Maldives. So there is a challenge for sure in terms of construction costs, and that's an area definitely the government can support. And adding on to what you mentioned, now we have a big target of 4 million tourists, $8 billion, and that to achieve that as an industry, we need to improve our plant. Most of the hotels in this country haven't been refurbished for the last 10 years. Since the economy, we have bad 5 years, that put a lot of pressure on the working capital of most of these companies. But even beyond that, that needs a lot of investment to even to accommodate these 4 million and to build more hotels. So I think from a authority point of view, there's an opportunity to incentivize and to enable these 4 million tourists to come in and 8 billion GDP impact. There's an opportunity to help the industry build cheaper from a capital productivity point of view.
Thank you, Mr. Hishan. Just a question from the Slido. It's a bit of a long question, but I'll read it out, Mr. Hishan. So it says, considering the shift from traditional luxury elements like buffets and star classrooms to simpler offerings such as home-cooked meals and eco-lodges, how is this trend towards simplicity redefining luxury in the hospitality industry? And what operational changes are necessary to cater to these evolving preferences?
So I think hospitality or tourism is a very broad term. You will have people who expecting different experiences at different levels. So as a destination, I hear a lot about Sri Lanka. We have to kind of attract the high-paying tourist, not the low budget. But as a destination, I think we should attract everyone. We are a big destination, big island, and we have capacity to do it. So there will be people who look for simpler home stays and more authentic experience. From a brand point of view, Cinnamon hotels are kind of our vision statement or our purpose statement is to say we bring the best of Sri Lanka to the world with style and elegance. But from a kind of realistic point of view, what we want to be is the destination expert. And if you talk about why people travel, people travel to make a connection with the people, make a connection with the culture, the food, and the community, so that they can feel a connection with themselves. So our purpose is also built around that. And from an operational point of view, what has changed over the last 10 years, I would say, is operations are moving from a cookie cutter, standard SOP, you have to say this when you see a guest, to a more intuitive, more enabling culture from service delivery point of view, with more better insight about customers and empowering for the guest service in front to deliver that unique personalized experience.
Thank you, Mr. Shan. I'll open the question. Yes. Could we have a mic to the right side of the room? Thank you.
Thank you for that presentation. It is good. My question is about scalability. You just now spoke about a particular business model, Cinnamon Red and then Candy Mist. But doesn't it limit us to only that, to break that vicious cycle? And how much can we scale this? If that goes on, then wouldn't we be stuck in that price point again? And then if we are to be marketed as destinations, so how do we break this? How scalable is what we just discussed?
Question is about the price or is the model?
The model, because what you said is lean, and for you to achieve those ratios, you need to operate in a certain way, which restricts you to a certain type of customer and experience.
Yes. So when I explained in the presentation, Cinnamon Red is a select service offering, which is, you call it a budget or mid-scale operation. That's why I mentioned how can you use that to, what are the parallels or extrapolation to a full service offering. That's where the last part of my presentation was, where, for a budget operation, that model works. But for a new operation, to enable it, you need, number one, technology. Even at a full service level, you won't achieve 0.75, but you can achieve 1.6, not the 2.2s. So to achieve 1.6 employee to room ratio, you need technology, you need transient workforce, and you need the labor laws to support it. That will enable to scale it to a full service operation. But you won't get to 0.75. You will be at 1.6, but at 1.6, it'll be still profitable, and earnings per employee will be better because your rates are higher at full service versus a budget. So the economics work at that 1.6.
I hope that answers your question. Okay. Any more questions from the floor? I saw a few hands earlier. I don't see them now. Okay, yeah, there's a question. Could we hand the mic over? Yes.
Hi, I just wanted to ask about the growing Indian market. I think historically we've had much more from Europe than increasingly China. And I think the last 2 years we saw a lot more from India than anywhere else. What can be done to cater to them specifically? What do they want from the Sri Lankan market?
So Indian market, not only for tourism, I think India is the opportunity to the whole of Sri Lanka. And it's a largest, fastest growing economy in the world. We're at the doorstep. And I think Indian numbers have superseded 2018 numbers, arrival-wise. So definitely they are picked to kind of grow by twofold over the next 5 to 7 years. They have about 25 million outbound tourists that will expected to go to 50 million. So if we get 1 million of that, out of that 50 million, that will be a big impact on the demand of Sri Lanka.
Anything specific they want from us? Is there a difference to what their tourists want to the European or the Chinese tourist?
There are nuances, but from an experience point of view, we have to stay true to what we offer, which is the destination and the, like I said, the authentic experience. Even Indian travelers to any traveler come to Sri Lanka for Sri Lanka, not for anything else. And we need to be able to deliver that well. But there are nuances like Indian traveler needs the Indian food. That's definitely one factor that all of us have to consider. But definitely that's an opportunity and there is a kind of perception around Indian mass tourism, but India is a big country, and you will have, even to Maldives, it's a big source market at a higher price. So there are enough demand at different price points to come into Sri Lanka.
Thank you.
Yep, we have one more question. In the middle, please, yes.
So hotel industry is a very capital intense industry, right? So for someone in a small to medium scale business who wants to grow the business by raising capital and stuff, what do you think? What should he do in order to go to the next step and take the big leap?
So hotels and tourism is at scalable at different levels. Like some other gentlemen mentioned about, you have homestays, you have boutique hotels, you have mid-scale hotels, budget hotels. So there is an opportunity at every level. One of the good things of tourism is it's a broad-based church in terms of what the demand is. It's not very specific, and Sri Lanka can offer everything. So anyone who wants to come into the industry, apart from a stay, there are affiliated factors like tours, guiding, food supply, handicrafts, other industries which are affiliated to the industry, which has a big, I would say, like the multiply impact of tourism is much more. So there's enough and more opportunity for any want to come into the industry. Like I said, there's indirectly 5% of the workforce is involved in tourism in one way or the other. And it is scalable in terms of where you can get involved. But from a capital point of view, the big impediment, like Murtaza also mentioned, is the construction cost. And that's an area that we have to work as a nation to kind of fix if we are really ambitious to get to 4 million to 5 million tourists.
Thank you, Mr. Hishan. We have one more question. Yes, please. Thank you.
You mentioned the success of your Cinnamon Red story was primarily driven by technology and a few other things. Specifically about technology, was it locally sourced or is it international brands? That's my number one. Number two, as a percentage of your capital investment, what was it like for technology, roughly?
Technology wasn't a big part of the investment because, like Murtaza said, the building itself will cost you a lot in Sri Lanka. But I mean, you need to keep improving on a technology. So it is a recurring investment where you need to keep investing in the new technology. And from a sourcing point of view, the check-in app was totally in-house built. But there were like operating system was brought in from outside. So we like even Charita mentioned earlier, we have to use technology what is available and develop. And there is enough and more people in Sri Lanka to develop it. So from an investment point of view, technology is not a big portion of capital, but problem we have is because construction or plant takes a lot part of the capital that leaves a very little room in terms of investment in other areas.
Thank you.
Yeah, so we have one more question here from the madam in the front. Yeah.
Thank you. In the tourism sector, we experienced the worst scenario just after the East attack. Then continuously, then we faced several adverse situations like COVID and then economic crisis. So then after 2023, so how about the Cinnamon Grand Hotels? As a group, is it now in the previous now do you meet in your revenue targets profitable levels? How do you experience it, the revenue Cinnamon Hotels?
So if I explain revenue, because it's very linked to demand levels. So tourist arrivals in 2024 were 2 million, which was slightly below 2018 peak we had. But the good thing is on the southern coast, the rates have improved, actually pipped 2018 levels. So from a Cinnamon point of view, our revenue has almost got to where it was. And as an industry, hotels and tourism, although there was a high inflation in terms of cost going up, we are slightly hedged because we earn in dollars. Our revenue is in dollars, so when exchange rate also goes up, our costs are also hedged. So from a profitability level, we are getting back to normal. I wouldn't say we are at normalcy level, but we expect 2025 to be the normal year. But the problem is over the last 5 years, we have to carry all that cost. And that has put a big pressure on the balance sheet. And that is the worry that we have in terms of if you are looking for growth, 4 million tourists, and to refurbish the plant, that puts pressure on kind of really driving that forward.
Thank you, Mr. Hishan. I think we'll have to wrap the Q&A session up. For any questions that could not be presented, please feel free to scan the QR and slide your answers in the Slido, and we will make sure we get back to you. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Hishan.
Thank you again, Mr. Singhawansa, for this very interesting session on rethinking hospitality operations through lean principles.